Hems are a little complicated, but once you do a few, you'll get the hang of it. The bibs will be marked with safety pins where the hem needs to be. There will be varying amounts of extra fabric between the hem and bottom of the opening because of how these are sized. For instance, the men's regular length is for guys between 5 foot 4 inches and 6 feet tall. Do not cut this fabric. The kids will hopefully have the same pair of bibs for all 4 years, and we want to be able to let the hem out as they grow. Or, if they outgrow their bibs, they will get a gently used pair, and we want to be able to alter them. First thing you'll need to do is figure out how far up you'll need to take out the original seam so the side material can fold flat. Hold the pants up to the safety pin. Where the bottom edge hits is where you're going to start taking out the original seam. Use your seam ripper to take out about every 5th stitch all the way to the opening. This will allow you to open the seam easily. Once the seam is ripped, wipe off or pull out the small thread bits that are left. You'll end up with this wide section that is going to need to lay flat as you fold the hem fabric up. I usually iron this flat, but it can be done without ironing. You might just need to work it a bit and pin things as you go. If you do choose to iron, you need to be careful not to burn or melt the fabric. Use a cool iron and a pressing cloth between the bibs and the iron. As you can see, the fabric lies much flatter and easier after being ironed. You're finally ready to start making the hem. First, fold up the fabric so the bottom of the opening is even with the safety pins. Make sure you have the fabric at both side seams open flat. Fold one more time. You should see the safety pins now at the bottom. Straighten the fabric at the seams again so they are flat. If they're giving you trouble, you can pin them. Just pay attention to how you're pinning so the pins don't end up sewn into the folds. Usually the fabric at the inside seam is not as much of a problem since it's narrower and already ironed, but pin it if it helps you. Line up the creases and place a pin to hold it together. Do this on the front and back. If the fabric at the seams is giving you trouble, pin it in place. Next, tuck these folds in the other direction. You'll want a 1/4 inch or so of the double fold sticking out past the top fabric. This is where the stitches will go. Line up the creases again and move your pin to the outside so you can easily remove it when you start sewing. Do that on the front and back. Put both hands into the opening and hold them taut, away from each other. This will help you to see if there is any loose fabric. Because the top fabric is wider than the folded parts, there is often some bagging. If you were to sew it like that, it would make puckering. To prevent that, you need to make a little vent in the folded fabric along the seam. The size of the vent will depend on how big the fold is. Just be sure you don't vent too close to the hemline on the outside fold. You can, however, remove all of the stitches on the other side all the way to the original opening. Now when you pull the opening taut, you'll see the vent spread out and the fabric lie flat. Pin this and check to see if you need to do the same thing on the other side. Give everything one last check to make sure you have it pinned well and the fabric is no longer baggy. Now that you have everything pinned in place, it is finally time to start sewing. If you don't know your machine's blind hem stitch setting, you can find it in the manual. Mine also recommends I change my presser foot, but I find I have more trouble with that foot and just leave my regular one on. I also like to increase my stitch width and length some to make it easier to capture the blind stitch. Start sewing on the inside seam. This way, if you end up with a pucker in the pants, it will be less noticeable. If the pucker is large, you will need to redo the hem, but if it's small, it should be fine. My machine starts by making one stitch to the left and 5 to the right, then 1 left, 5 right, etc. When you get to the vent on the other seam, you're going to just continue sewing as if there is fabric on the right, but the machine will only be stitching the fabric on the left for that section. Do the same thing at the next vent. Finish off a few stitches past your starting point. Cut the long threads and check your work. When you first open the pants, the stitches will look a little tight. Just give them a gentle tug to loosen them up. On the outside, you should only see the occasional stitch. If you accidentally sewed the straight stitches onto the fold or missed some blind stitches, you will notice that here. You can see where I missed a few stitches. Fold the pants back over and sew over that area again. If you straight stitched the fold, remove that section and sew back over it, starting an inch before and ending an inch after. Change your stitch setting to zigzag stitch for the elastic stirrups. Center one end of the 9-inch elastic stirrup about an inch up on the side seam on the inside of the pants. Sew back and forth across the elastic about 4 times to secure it in place, and repeat on the other side. You may need to hold the elastic straight on the second side until you get the first set of stitches in. Cut long threads, check to see the elastic is securely fastened and that the elastic is not twisted in the middle. Repeat these steps on the other pant leg and mark off the student's card. If your machine does not have a blind hem stitch, you can use a wide zigzag. You'll want to stitch across the fold to capture both sides. This will let you open the pants flat on the outside. It should look similar to this when you are finished. If a pair of bibs needs to be shortened or lengthened, it will be noted on the back of the student's card. There should be safety pins marking the original hem when you get them, but if not, you will need to place some. Remove the stirrups and set them aside to be reattached later. Use seam rippers to open the hem. To lengthen the pants, measure down from the pin the number of inches indicated on the student's card. Place a new safety pin here. Do the same thing on the other side of the pant leg. When lengthening the pants, the side seams will likely have been removed farther up the leg than you need, and you will have to re-sew the seams. To shorten the pants, measure and place safety pins above the originals accordingly. If you are shortening the pants, you will need to fold the pants up at the new hemline and see how much extra original seam needs to be removed. Once you have the new hemline marked, follow the same steps as you would if you were pinning and hemming the new hem.